The research station belched jets of flame into space as Dr. Okiro watched through the window of the escape pod. As she sped away, the drift pirates circled the wreck in their ships, thankfully more concerned with destruction and ransacking for loot than they were with the recently jettisoned human cargo. Dr. Okiro was grateful for their lack of interest. They had no idea the value of the work that was taking place in the lab there, the value of the container that she now held tightly in her arms. The protocol had been to protect the assets at all costs, and she had done that. The beacon had been triggered, and worst case scenario would be maybe drift aimlessly out here for a few days before someone from HQ came to collect her. She wiped the condensation from the container's lid. 12 eggs. Perfect, light green spheres. Protect the assets at all costs. Relieved that the carnage she had escaped was now just another distant spot in the shimmering starfield outside, she closed her eyes and tried to get some rest. Inside the container, the shells started to splinter quietly as all 12 eggs began to hatch. Hello and welcome to The Bad Spot, an actual play podcast in which I, Matt Risby, and I alone will be playing through Ironsworn Starforged. After 2 episodes in which I made a character and then built a world for them to explore, it is finally time to actually play this thing, which for an actual play podcast is kind of important. That said, please strap yourselves in for the last 2 bits of housekeeping. I'm going to talk about player safety and content in a moment, but first, I'm going to explain how to play Ironsworn in 196 seconds. Okay, so playing Ironsworn is simple. You envision the fiction and roleplay what your character is doing. When you face a situation in the narrative where the outcome is uncertain, this will trigger a move. A move is a mechanic that resolves this uncertainty using dice. You roll the dice, determine the result, then apply it to the fiction, which you then continue to roleplay. Let's have a look at the move called Gather Information. We're going to make this move whenever my character searches for clues, asks questions, analyzes evidence, or does research. That's its trigger. Whenever this happens in the fiction, we're going to roll some dice and add the relevant stat. Remember our stats? In the case of Gather Information, it is asking us to roll plus wits. Here are the dice. The red d6 is the action dice. This is what we're going to roll and add our stat to. The black d10s are the challenge dice. Each time we roll dice for a move, we're trying to beat the values on the d10s. Here, we've rolled a 6 and added our wits of +4. This beats both challenge dice and is called a strong hit. It's the best possible result and gives us the best possible outcome. We apply the result of the strong hit to the fiction and then carry on. Here, we've rolled a 2, which with our +4 wits only beats one of the challenge dice. This is called a weak hit, a success but with complications. Again, we apply the result of the weak hit to the fiction and keep playing. When you don't beat either challenge dice, it's called a miss, and this is bad. Very bad. You apply the result to the fiction as instructed, then make another move called Pay the Price, and I won't explain that here as you will see me do this a lot. In all cases, if the action dice ties the challenge dice, it doesn't count, you need to beat them. Should you ever roll a double on the challenge dice, this is called a match and has additional effects. A match on a strong hit gives you an extra boost or advantage, whilst on a miss you are going to suffer an additional complication. Whilst playing the game, strong hits and weak hits, plus some other effects provided by assets, will help build your momentum. Momentum is a powerful resource, as you can save it up and then burn it to cancel the score on your action roll and replace it with your current momentum. Here, by burning our momentum of 9, we can turn this miss into a weak hit. After you burn your momentum, it resets and you have to build it up again. Your health, mental health, and supply are measured on these tracks here, and yes, I am playing a deeply unforgiving game where you only ever have 5 fucking hit points. What of it? Suffice to say, any of these dropping to 0 is bad. Now we have to talk about progress tracks. These are 10 blank boxes that are used to record our progress. These can represent anything: a journey, a fight, a relationship. When we start a challenge, we start a new progress track, and we can have several of these running at the same time. These tracks start empty and we fill them in whenever the game instructs us to mark progress. Each track has a challenge rank that determines how hard it is to complete. You fill in the boxes like this. If a challenge has the easiest rank, which is troublesome, you fill in 3 full boxes each time you make progress. If the rank is formidable, which is the middle difficulty, you fill in 1 box each time you make progress. The hardest rank is epic. Each time you make progress on an epic challenge, you mark only 1 tick. Remember that background vow I made during character creation? Yeah, that was epic. So that's going to be a long one. There is obviously much, much more to this game, but that is the general idea. Now, we're going to take a brief moment to talk about player safety. Now, this is very important, and anyone playing a tabletop role-playing game with a group, no matter how well they know each other, should take some time at the start of the campaign to discuss the content and what each player feels comfortable including. There are some great safety tools out there, and there is no better place to start than the TTRPG Safety Toolkit, which is compiled by Kiana Shaw and Lauren Bryant Monk, to which I'll include a link below. Now, I'm playing this game on my own, so this is a little different. I know what kind of content I am comfortable including. That said, I will state now that whilst the campaign I'm about to embark on will most likely feature conflict and some action violence, I shall keep it generally PG-13 in tone and include content warnings both at the start of the episode and in the notes below should I think anything need flagging. I do apologise in advance for my language, which might stretch the PG-13 boundaries, but what can I say? I have a potty mouth. I'm very sorry. Now, with that important business concluded, let's play Ironsworn Starforged. Archer Barlow has been in Redemption for 2 days and 2 nights, which by his reckoning is probably 2 days and 2 nights too long, because frankly this place has a very weird vibe. In a galaxy where, as we established, displays of faith and piety are rare, or all but unknown, in Redemption they are everywhere. And in his time there, he's noticed that this place seems to be exclusively populated by 2 diametrically opposed groups of people, and they are pilgrims and grubs. Now, the pilgrims have heard word of the quote-unquote miracle of the Redemption, which is the ship that several decades ago fell from the sky and ploughed a valley into this jungle planet's surface. At one end of the valley is the towering black shaft of that ship's hull, breaking the tree line above, this dirty great metal spire. Lining either side of the valley are buildings, if you can even call them that. They're cobbled together with bits of scrap left from the crash. There's cooling towers and engine fragments that have been repurposed for homes and other buildings. Then there's kind of large bits of catwalk and girders have been repurposed to form walkways between the treetops. And the reason the pilgrims find this place so important is because some say that the survivors of that wreck still walk among the population. But no one can be sure. But it keeps the faithful coming, and come they do, in vast numbers. Now, the grubs, on the other hand, they're just here to pick the planet clean. The Redemption was a huge ship, an Ironhome class ship. It was a massive vessel. And as it entered the atmosphere and started to fragment, it scattered its fuselage across Damu's surface. Now, the pilgrims see the ship as kind of a holy relic, I guess. So the grubs are just there doing a job, just returning the parts of the ship to the people who find it so important, and obviously for a price. But there's constant chatter amongst grubs, and in those circles that the Redemption was perhaps carrying some ancient homeworld artifacts that can be found somewhere among the trees and the fog. So Archer's here because he received a transmission from our connection, the conduit. It just said, go to Damu and be ready. And he's been there and been ready for 2 days and 2 nights, awaiting further instructions, but still nothing. Now, he's not strayed too far from the spaceport, mostly stayed aboard the Eclipse whilst waiting for the heralds to arrive. Now, let's start the story just after they've been. He's got the instructions. He's got what he's been waiting for. So what has he been waiting for? What do these instructions say? What is the conduit asking of him? So obviously, because of his set of skills, he's there to recover something, but what? Why? And why Archer Barlow specifically? Is looking for one of these homeworld artifacts too boring? Is that too boring? Definitely. I think we can do better than that. Let's ask the Oracle. Let's roll a couple of words up on the theme and descriptor oracles and see what we are given. Okay, 14 is broken, and 56 is memory. Broken memory. What could that mean?
broken memory.
Memory like data memory, and broken like it's a fragment of it, maybe like it's a digital archive. That's it. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. A data bank which contains fragments of a digital archive of what? What's on it? I don't know, but it's got to be something important if I've been asked to retrieve it. So that's a safe assumption. So okay. So we established in the world building that Damu is a planet that's kind of separated by this mountain range, and on either side there is these two contrasting ecosystems. So let's say we're in the southern hemisphere, and that's where redemption is. But what if the northern hemisphere, the other side of the mountains, was somewhat less hospitable? Maybe feared? Is it just superstition of the locals? They don't want to go over the other side of the mountain? Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. The people in the southern hemisphere, the southerners, they just don't go there. So what if that's where I've got to go? Is that interesting? I think it is. So yeah, let's say whatever I'm looking for is on the other side of the mountain, the wrong side of the mountain. But why? I tell you what, let's ask the Oracle. Why is this data bank on the wrong side of the mountains? Let's just roll up another word and see what it says. Okay, 14 is creation. Does that help us? Creation. Okay, well, hang on. What if creation was the sister ship to the redemption? Two ships? Everyone knows the redemption crashed, but what happened to the creation? Was this a missionary fleet? What's the minimum requirement for a fleet? Is it 2? I think it's 2. That's what we're saying. There were 2 missionary ships, the creation and the redemption, and they both crashed. But no one knows what happened to the creation because the people on the redemption survived, and that was miracle enough. And I don't know if they just even assumed the creation even kept going or if it landed or what. They just don't know what happened to it. And now the story has been consumed by the miracle of the redemption, and the creation has just been completely forgotten about. So that's where we're going. The creation is a sister ship to the redemption. On that sister ship is a data bank with a fragment of an archive, and that is what we're going to find. So, okay, what does this message say? So I imagine these heralds bring data in kind of like small memory stick type things, and you get them out of your lockbox or whatever, or sign for them, I don't know, and you get them and you kind of plug in and you see it's a text base. There's no like images or anything, and the message just starts with book, which obviously makes Barlow cringe because he hates being called that. It says, book, if you're reading this, you're on the wrong side of the mountains. And then there's just some coordinates and kind of like a description of the data bank. And what's this data bank like? Is it like a USB? I think it's more kind of clunky, bigger, like an external hard drive. Do people understand what external hard drives are? External CD drives, they definitely aren't a thing. So yeah, like a small shoebox size. People still have shoes, right? Small shoebox size, kind of bit of machinery, kind of plugs in maybe into a rack. Yeah, that's what we're looking for. That's what the data bank looks like. And then the message ends something like, this retrieval is of great importance. Once secure, delivered to Concord, which is, where we established the conduit is most likely to be. And it then says, where I shall be handling the matter personally. So I think that's an extra layer for Archer, because we've never met the conduit. And the conduit's jobs always come with a promise of more information about my overall goal. So maybe that's what's really going to drive me to do this right, because I might get to I might get some FaceTime with the conduit. And then the message ends. Love and kisses, the conduit. No, it doesn't. It just says the conduit. Well, no, TC. No, nothing. It just doesn't end. That's not the conduit style. So I'm in the cockpit of the Eclipse and kind of punch in the coordinates and get a vague layout of the planetary location. It's quite a way away. And yeah, we set off. So we kind of pull up out of the spaceport. It's still early in the morning. And the ship rises up through the fog, which wasn't there a second ago. But it kind of shifts so quickly. And as we kind of reach an elevation, I kind of take a look back at the kind of ugly valley of redemption, this kind of scar on the earth. And then in a shift of the fog, it's gone. And we climb up and over the mountains, the Eclipse kind of juddering like an old Ford Cortina struggling up a hill. And we near the top, we can see a huge kind of chunk of the mountain missing. Perhaps is that where the redemption hit it on the way down and kind of just clipped the top of the mountain off? Yeah, I think it did. That's pretty cool. It's just kind of like a really obvious flat bit that's kind of been taken out. And we drop over the other side and into the northern hemisphere, as it were. And instantly, it's a different world. There's no fog, and the dark kind of jade green foliage of the southern hemisphere is replaced by this vast expanse of sickly yellow. The trees look thinner, less full, patchier, less alive, maybe. And I kind of see on my readouts on my instruments on the dashboard that it's much colder. The temperature is just like plummeted. In the southern hemisphere, it's already sticky and humid, and yeah, this is downright cold. This is like proper northern weather, and it's just endless. It just goes on and on and on and on. So we're flying for about, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes before, and the scenery has not changed much. I near the coordinates as given, and it doesn't seem to be much, but if you know anything about the conduit, the information is always good. The intel is always solid, so you trust it. And we reach the coordinates, and looking down, there's just a break in the trees, not much bigger than the eclipse itself. And I trust the information and start to set the ship down. The ship kind of comes to a stop with the landing gear meets this rocky shelf, this outcrop. I get out, and Griff comes with me, trundling down the ramp as we leave. And I think the ramp comes out the side of the ship. Kind of tap the fuselage as if to say, "You made it, Eclipse, well done." We kind of head down onto this rocky shelf and kind of approach the edge cautiously. And we look down, and below us is maybe like 50, 60 meters away is a gorge. And the gorge is kind of overgrown with this urine yellow lichen. There's no sound of life. There's just maybe the gentle trickle of water going through the gorge, but it's just kind of ominously quiet. And there's this sickly smell in the air, kind of almost a chemical smell. And I kind of asked Griff to scan it, and he kind of twitches and burrs and makes a noise like an old modem. And, the readout on his side says, the air's breathable, but I'm just going to put on that respirator thing that I have. I'm not going to take any chances. So I get my multi-purpose space poker out, and I kind of plant it into the ground, and little feet come out, kind of making it almost like a tripod. And then out of my satchel, I pull a small scope which fits and clicks into the top of the staff as it's in the ground, and it becomes like one of those little like kind of things that surveyors use to kind of scan the horizon. And I use it to try and kind of ascertain what I'm looking at. And it's hard to see at first because this whole area just seems to be one kind of mossy carpet. But you stop and look, and you can make out down in the gorge the very distinct shape of a ship. It's smaller than the Redemption by a long shot, but it's still a pretty big vessel. And this is the Creation. But the Creation, unlike the Redemption, has been totally reclaimed by the jungle. It is just overgrown. And this has just been here decades, not like a millennia. The planet has started to reclaim this ship for itself. You could fly over and not notice it easily. It is at one with the Earth. So this is where we're going to find the databank. So I believe it's time for us to make our first move, which is to swear an iron vow. And we're going to name this vow, first of all. We're going to say it's called Recover the Databank and Return it to the Conduit. So we're going to give it a rank. We're going to give it the rank of Dangerous, because I don't want it to start too difficult. So let's swear this iron vow. What does that look like to Archer Barlow? Now, we established in the world building that iron vows in this world are sworn on black iron tokens, aren't they? That rare resource of black iron. So what do I have? What's my little token that I swear on? Now, what's driving me? What's driving me is the search for Professor Darwin, right? That's who I'm looking for. I'm looking for her. So what if it's something of hers that she gave me? So she's my professor, and we work for the Griffin Institute, or worked for the Griffin Institute. What is something that she would have that could be of value to me, maybe sentimental value or symbolic value? What if it was like let's say the Institute is kind of like an explorer's guild, isn't it? So what could they grant you to have as a kind of a symbolic token of membership, maybe? What if it's a compass? What if it's a black iron compass? Let's do that. Okay, so what does swearing this vow look like to Archer Barlow? I've got this kind of picture in my mind that he's just really glib and throwaway, but he's sincere. So I think he holds the compass in his hand and he closes his eyes and he just kind of says to himself, okay, let's just fucking do this. And I think because he's not one for dramatics, he just wants to get in and out and stay alive. So yeah, we're going to roll plus heart. So our heart is +2. So let's roll it. Wonderful. Great start. A miss. So it says, on a miss, you face a significant obstacle before you make progress on your quest. Envision what stands in your way and do what you must to overcome this obstacle. So that's great. Now, I don't want to fight a monster. I think that would slow things down significantly. What could our significant obstacle be? Right, yeah, okay. What if someone else is here before us? That would be bad news, wouldn't it? What if I'm kind of scanning the outline of the ship and I've kind of established where the stern is and the bow and generally kind of work out whereabouts the parts of it are. But what if the most likely point of access that I can see is kind of on the top of the ship and it's just this hatch, but it's open? It's like clearly very obviously been disturbed. So who else would be here looking? Grubs, probably? Yeah. And is there a code of honor amongst grubs? Like, is it finders keepers? Is that the vibe? I think it is. I think you can't just kind of turn up and shoot people in the back. I think people do, but that's not the code of this profession. So it looks like we've got a bit of a race on our hands. We are going to have to get there before them or we're going to lose the data bank. So why are they here, though? Do you think the conduit put them onto the job? Do you think they're kind of midnight running this and this is the Marvin of the situation? Is this they're trying to kind of hedge their bets? That feels a bit double-crossy to me. But yeah, someone's here before me, and yeah, that's a problem. So me and Griff, we're going to work our way up the ship. He's hovering beside me now, kind of clambering up the side towards the access hatch. And even though it's overgrown, it's still in one piece, the ship. It's not like the Redemption scattered into bits across everywhere. It looks like it came down intact, which is interesting. So I'm going to use the rules in Starforged for exploring derelicts. And what that does is that adds a bit of structure to exploring sites like this, which we'll see as we go. So the access point to this derelict is the hatch that we've seen from a distance with a kind of look down into it. And it's kind of this deep, deep vertical shaft. And I can just see the first few rungs of a ladder leading down into the darkness. And this is where we are going to make another move. So we're actually going to make the move called Undertake an Expedition, which is when you trailblaze a route through perilous space, journey over hazardous terrain, or survey a mysterious site, give the expedition a name and rank. So we're going to have a second progress track running, and we're going to call it Explore the Creation. Now, as I said in the How to Play, you can have multiple tracks running at a time. And in this case, this Explore the Creation track is going to actually interact with my Iron Vow, because if I complete this expedition and complete this track, it will count as progress towards the vow. You'll see how it works. It's fine. So let's give it a rank. I think it's also dangerous. I don't want to spend forever in here, not especially if we have established that someone else is here first, and time is very much of the essence. So Griff is going to help me, because he's a little survey bot. He's got an ability which says, your survey bot scans the path ahead. When you undertake an expedition, plus wits, overland, or within a site, add +1. So we're going to kind of use him to make an initial scan. And I'm like, hey, buddy, see what's down there, would you? And we're going to look in for immediate danger. I think it'd be kind of too OP if he can scan the entire ship and tell us where everything is. And at the end of the day, he is a boxy flying toaster. So, yeah, he kind of blips and whirs and chatters like a dot matrix printer and kind of scans ahead for me. So let's make a roll. Now, you've got options when you undertake an expedition. Depending on how you want to go about your exploration, you choose what stat to roll with. So if you want to move quickly, you roll +edge. If you want to kind of do it more surreptitiously, then you roll +shadow. Or if you stay vigilant and alert, more cautious, you use wits. And I think this initial section, I want to be very cautious. So I'm going to roll plus wits. So that is a strong hit with Griff's help. It says, on a strong hit, you reach a waypoint, envision the location, and mark progress per the rank of your expedition. So I think Griff's scan comes back clear. There's no immediate danger at the bottom of this ladder. And I descend down it, and it's a long way down. It is deceptively a long way down. I think the ship must go under where the ground is, because this is like a kind of 70-meter plus downward climb. It's claustrophobic. It's a tight, dark shaft, and the air is kind of stale. It doesn't smell too bad. I don't think there's too many bad things down here. And I think Griff is going to stay behind. I don't think this is any place for a little robot buddy. And plus, I might need someone to stay in the Eclipse and keep the engine running should we need to make a sharp exit. Shall we see where we pop out? We're going to roll on the oracles for derelicts, which kind of breaks down what kind of spaces you find in places like this. So let's just roll. So 61 is medical. So I think when you get to the bottom of the ladder, I kind of there's an open hatch and there's light down there. So I kind of pop my head out and I'm looking into a smallish round room. The lights are on, which is weird. And it was probably once a very clean, sterile environment. There's, but it's kind of seen better days. Obviously, it's on a crash ship. I mean, come on. There's overturned infirmary beds. There's, kind of like CAT scanners with a kind of like table that slides in and out. There's overhead lockers, which would probably contain lots of like medical gear and stuff, but all the contents have long since spilled out. And the floor is littered with equipment and bottles and vials and metal instruments, and I kind of drop down into the room with cat-like grace, 3-point landing, superhero style. And I think I'd like to try and find out a bit more about who I'm after, as in who is here ahead of me, and maybe if they've come the same way, which we know they have because the hatch was open, which way they're going, and perhaps find out a little bit more information about them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the move gather information. So gather information is what you do when you're looking for clues or you're trying to analyze evidence, that kind of thing. So I want to know maybe how many there are. If it's just one person, how much trouble am I in, basically, just from this kind of initial look. So yeah, let's roll it up. Okay, that's a strong hit. So the strong hit says you discover something helpful and specific. The path you must follow or action you must take to make progress is clear. Envision what you learn and take +2 momentum. My momentum is up to 4. That's good because I will need that. If you get into a bit of a pickle later, you'll end up burning through that. So what do I envision that's helpful? I think, well, maybe there's 2 ways out of this room, and there's 2 sets of footprints that very definitely lead out of one of the doors. And I think that maybe I don't have that much time, so I'm going to have to go the same way as them to at least keep up with them. Because I don't know what kind of information they have, whether they've got like schematic readouts of the ship, if they know exactly where to go or what they're looking for. But I can't take that risk. So the footprints are pretty dirty, so maybe they didn't fly in like I did. Maybe they trudged through the jungle. Who knows? But yeah, I think one other bit of kind of housekeeping. I said the lights were on, which is weird considering this is a derelict ship. But let's retcon that slightly and say by the door that the footprints left out of, there's a kind of an electrical panel, and it's been yanked recently open and kind of hot wired essentially, and that's brought the emergency lighting on, definitely in this room, and possibly I can see in the corridor beyond that they're on there. So it's kind of like this red light that's keeping things illuminated for me. So that's like a little mechanical benefit for me, so I don't have to stumble around in the dark. So let's keep moving. So I've established that I'm outnumbered. There's 2 sets of footprints, so that's 2 people, and I think I'm gonna have to probably move quickly. So this next part of the expedition, I'm gonna move with my edge. I'm gonna move plus edge, try and make up a bit of ground. So let's roll it up, make the move again plus edge. So that is a weak hit. So a weak hit. So I reach a waypoint and I envision the location and mark progress. So we are up to 4 progress, which is good. But on a weak hit, the progress costs you. So choose one of these 2 options. Suffer costs en route. I don't really want to do that. So face a peril at the waypoint. So firstly, let's envision where we are and what it looks like. So Let's say that I lost the trail along some kind of corridors. I'm kind of following these kind of fairly industrial type corridors, and I lost the trail of the junction. And there's kind of a left and a right, and I'm just going to take the left and going to enter another room. Let's roll this up and see what kind of facility it is. It's a research facility. What kind of research could be done on a missionary ship, one wonders. Let's describe it. I think it's a small kind of... It's not... Research isn't a huge part of that missionary vibe. That missionary life. They ain't about that life. So I think it's a small room, kind of hexagonal. And there's a central kind of workbench / desk with microscopes and sample trays, and one of them things that shakes test tubes and all that. One of those. So what could they be researching in here? I guess maybe agriculture. Yeah, agriculture maybe. So yeah, maybe they obviously didn't intend to end up on a jungle planet, but let's say that this research facility is all about seeding a planet when they arrive wherever they were going. Maybe it didn't have a hospitable ecosystem, and they would perhaps have to seed the planet with crops and stuff like that. And yeah, there's test tubes around with like long dead samples, and there's this kind of overwhelming chemical smell in the air, like kind of maybe formaldehyde. Do you grow potatoes in formaldehyde? Probably not. I wouldn't have thought so. I'm no scientist. But yeah, we're going to face a peril because we've got a weak hit. So we're just going to roll on the Oracle and see what kind of peril that could be. So 82 says unstable technology. Okay. So unstable technology. So, okay, well, what if there is in the corner of the research room? I did say it's a hexagon shape, but let's say one of the 6 corners of this room, there are these kind of tall, like a 2 meter tall, really wide tanks, and they've got like hazardous symbols all over them. And let's say they are held in place by kind of like this containment unit, and let's just say that from the looks of it, it's been kind of slowly eroding, and it looks unstable, like real unstable, like immediately unstable. Like if maybe the power coming back on in some part has kind of tried to turn the containment unit back on or something, and it's short-circuited, but I need to keep moving because by the looks of it, if I have to come back this way, this whole part of the ship might not be here because this is a very unstable set of dangerous chemicals that could just wipe out a whole section of the ship. So I'm just gonna clear off out of here. I can't stick around here too long. So I'm gonna roll again to move quickly. I'm gonna undertake an expedition again with plus edge. So let's roll that. See what we got. Okay, that's a good, juicy, strong hit. That's 2 more boxes on the progress. That is up to 6 progress. Okay, so where are we now? We have gone from medical into research. So where are we now? So we've entered some living quarters. I think I've been moving quickly, so it's kind of a long series of corridors that are becoming a little bit more complex. And I'm not taking too long to read the signs. This is not how I'd normally approach things, but time is of the essence, so I'm just moving quickly. So find these living quarters, and it's a large, long room with bunks built into the walls and kind of scattered furniture, but not too much else. There doesn't seem to be a lot of like personal effects by the looks of things, which I guess makes a lot of sense if this is a missionary vessel, kind of not perhaps too materialistic. Don't want to take a lot with them other than the good word. But what else can we see? We're going to roll on the features oracle of the living quarters section of the derelicts workbook and see what we can find. 63. Scrawled warning. A scrawled warning. Well, that's ominous, isn't it? Where is this? I think it's scrawled fairly large, maybe on a set of doors that is kind of slowly kind of opening and closing as they kind of malfunction, kind of mechanically opening and closing. And as they close, it brings together the letters that say something. Let's roll up and see what it says. So, okay, roll on the oracles again. 13 is betray. Okay. And 85 is sacred. Sacred betray. Betrayal of the sacred. I mean, I don't know what that means, but it sounds cool. Betrayal of the sacred. Someone scrawled that on the doors. Now, what could that mean? What could that mean? Like, was there some internal strife here? Was there like the people on board suddenly made aware that their mission wasn't what they thought it was when they set off, and that Perhaps they'd been betrayed? Is that what brought the ship down? Was there a mutiny? By golly, was there a mutiny? A big disagreement about the ship's purpose led to an internal struggle and possibly a mutiny. I like that. I feel like we're getting warmer. We're learning more about what's going on. So let's not linger and continue the expedition. So let's try and keep a low profile this time. I think we're getting closer. I don't want to be seen, so let's take a more clandestine approach and roll up plus shadow. Weak hit. So we're definitely going to mark progress. So that takes us up to 8 out of 10. So we are very much nearing the end. And first, let's envision where we come out. So trying to keep a low profile. I've been skulking in the shadows, sticking to the dark spots, moving quickly between the dark spots down the corridors. And yeah, let's see where we come out. So rolling up. Engineering. So we've come out in the engineering. So, okay, it makes sense that there's quite a distance between the living quarters and the engineering. So maybe the corridors kind of became a bit of a labyrinth, and kind of navigating them and finding access points has slowed me down. And I think if on a weak hit, that it has to cost you have to do a suffer move, then I think it's cost me a bit of momentum. So I think my momentum is back down to 2. But I think I've found that there's signs of a struggle. There's scorch marks, maybe small arms, fire damage. But I think kind of looking at this that's what slowed me down. But I find my way there, and I'm in engineering. I'm kind of through a set of heavy doors, and I'm up on a catwalk looking down into a vast kind of warehouse-sized room. I think let's add a bit of flavour. Let's roll a peril for here, because I feel like that would be interesting, even though we've actually paid a price. But these perils don't seem too bad, he says confidently. So let's roll and see what we come up with. 61. 61 is sabotaged equipment. So okay, what's down in engineering? Like a power core? Do ships have power cores? They probably do. Let's say that's slap bang in the center of the room, and it's just been ripped open. There's this massive explosion, must have been huge, and all the machinery around it is blackened with blast marks and big kind of shards of shrapnel dug into the surroundings. So yeah, there seems to have been a kind of a brief, violent struggle that involved kind of an uprising amongst people who felt betrayed, and someone blew up the power core, which, I mean, I'm no expert at flying a spaceship. That seems like something you'd need whilst you're in the air. But yeah, these things happen. I guess people lost their tiny minds aboard the creation. Okay, so I think I'm going to make the explore a waypoint move, because I think there's information here that could be useful to me. So yeah, the Explorer Waypoint move says when you divert from an expedition to examine a notable location, roll plus wits. And I think I'm going to use my Explorer asset, which says when you explore a waypoint, take +1 momentum on a hit. So yeah, I think let's do it. Okay, let's roll. Oh yes. Strong hit. So I'm going to bump my momentum back up 2 plus the 1 for my Explorer asset, so that puts me back up to 5, which is nice because it slowed us down getting lost in the kind of twisty turny corridors. So envision a favourable insight, situation, resource, or encounter. So what could that be? I'm going to climb down onto the engineering floor. Okay, what favourable insight can we envision? I think that as I cross the engineering floor, I'm instantly drawn to a kind of a fairly large screen which is kind of flickering on, and it's a schematic of the entire ship. There's a map, and it kind of shows me the layout on this kind of black and white screen. It's basic, but I can kind of see where I am, and I can see that the operations section of the ship, or the bridge, is pretty close, and I think I know that's where I'm going to find this data bank. Now, also, let's keep this pretty favourable. I think there's a little kind of CCTV type monitor, and I think that shows me that my 2 competitors, should we say, are actually outside the operations section of the ship, trying to get their way in. So they are ahead of me. So I need to move quickly now, and I need to figure out how to beat them to where they're going. But did they come this way? Do I think? Should we gather information and see if they came this way? Okay, so let's roll plus wits, gather information. Strong hit. Okay, so discover something helpful and specific. The path I follow is clear. Envision what you learn and take 2 momentum. So 2 momentum back up to... I'm up to 7 now, which is a healthy amount to be on. So yeah, what can I envision? Well, I think over the far side of the engineering room, kind of like between the machines, I can see this twitching mechanical door. And yeah, it's pretty obvious they came this way now. And beyond that door is a short corridor. And I think that leads to the bridge. That leads to operation. So I've not rolled operations yet on the derelict's oracles, but I think it makes perfect sense. So that's where it's going to be. So kind of move along this corridor quietly, stealthily, and there's a heavy security door at its end that is ajar. Because these guys they're born in a bloody barn, these guys. Left it open, and I'm going to have a look through and see what I can see. I think, yeah, we're on the bridge, and I think this was the climax of whatever conflict there was on this ship. This saw some heavy action. There's blast marks everywhere, there's fire damage, there's signs of just general struggle, lots of debris. It's a mess. So, yeah, whoever tried to execute this mutiny was clearly successful. It's a large circular room, and I think that in the center are stations for each of the officers, I guess, who have different jobs lined out like desks. And around the outside of the room, there's kind of consoles lining the perimeter where more crew would have sat and kind of tapping on their buttons and keeping things flying. So I think the equipment and the consoles are all quite blocky, kind of banks of lights and switches and plugs and wires and kind of big round blinking buttons. But I can identify some of the consoles. I'm by no means a spacefarer, but some of them are obvious. There's a navigation area that looks fairly straightforward. There's like comms and shield systems, weapons, that kind of thing. And on the opposite side of this kind of circular room to where I am, there's a huge window, which probably would have been, it probably looks out across the bow. You'd hope so, because otherwise they're flying backwards. So yeah, it looks out across the bow, but now it's just all vegetation. It's all covered over, and pockets of the glass have been pushed through with overgrown yellowy vines and moss coming through. But that's kind of allowed some light in, kind of these kind of yellowy green shafts of light that kind of cut across the room. And I think that's where I find two grubs. Two grubs dressed as many grubs are, in kind of heavy work gear, large backpacks, breathing apparatus, which is obviously the opposite of how I approach things. I pack light, move fast, and this all looks pretty cumbersome to me. But they strike an imposing figure. Their masks mean I can't identify them, I don't know them, I can't see their faces, but they're both heavy set, intimidating, and armed, each with a kind of a bulky sidearm. Looks built for stopping power. I guess the life of a grub is dangerous, and it can turn violent. But I'm gonna have to get to this data bank before them, because let's just say that I don't think they're by the way they're searching this place, and they're searching it fairly frantically. I don't think they know what they're looking for, or if they do, they don't know where is the logical place to find it. So these might not be the two sharpest tools in the shed, and they've got their backs to each other on opposite sides of the room. So as I look, one's to the left and one's to the right, and they're kind of frantically pulling drawers out and ripping panels off, and I need to figure out where this data bank's going to be. So I'm going to make a move called Secure an Advantage, which says when you assess a situation, make preparations, or attempt to gain leverage, envision your action and roll. I think with expertise, focus, or observation. We're going to roll plus wits, because why not? We're a one-trick pony who only relies on their wits. So yes, I think I know where it's going to be. So what I'm looking for is like the ship's central operating system, I guess. So let's roll and see what we do. Okay, weak hit. So, weak hit says choose one, take 2 momentum, or add +1 on your next move. Okay, I think the next move I make is going to be fairly decisive, so I'm going to take the +1. So I see what I'm looking for, and it is right ahead of me on the far side of the room, underneath the window. It's on a small console, and it looks like the most advanced piece of kit in the room. And I identify that as the central operating system and the kind of the central archive. And I can see pretty clearly, kind of illuminated almost perfectly by a shaft of light coming from the window, that there's a rack that's filled with these shoebox-sized drives, and there is like 2 or 3 in there, but it's one of those. That's where it is. But because this was a weak hit after all. It is situated perfectly between the two grubs. Now they have their back to it, but they seem to be slowly working their way around there. But if I can get there first, by the kind of grub code, I will have the legitimate claim to the find. And yeah, I'll have my hands on the databank. And I think by finding the databank's actual location, I have reached a milestone in my iron vow of finding the databank and returning it to the conduit. I think reach a milestone is a quest move that says when you make headway in your quest by doing any of the following, you may mark progress per the rank of the vow, and one of the options is gaining meaningful insight. And I think that finding the location of exactly what I'm looking for is very much meaningful insight. So we're going to mark progress on that vow. Okay, we've got +1 on the next move, so we can make this pretty confidently. So I think I'm going to try and sneak across the room. I'm going to kind of try and keep low to the floor, move from where I am across to the consoles in the middle, and then get across to where the central operating system is, pull out the drive, say, ta-da, sorry guys, beat you to it, tough luck, better luck next time, and then we'll all go for a drink, probably. That's what I'm thinking anyway. So I've got +1 on the move. I'm going to try and stealth across there, so I'm going to roll plus shadow. Okay, so face danger, roll plus shadow, +1 on the move. Fuck. Oh dear. Okay, so I move quickly across the room. I'm keeping low, and I am being so light of foot, it is unreal. But this is an old wreck. And as I move, one of my feet goes through a panel on the floor and makes an absolutely almighty racket. And the two grubs on either side of the room immediately turn to face me. And that's when I know the jig is up. I have failed. I have failed to retrieve the databank. They will find out where it is, and they will make the claim ahead of me. But then all they do is they slowly draw their guns. And this is when I realize that these guys ain't grubs. Thank you very much for listening to the first proper episode of this actual play. I think you'll agree it ended on quite the cliffhanger there, and we'll play to find out what happens next week. In the meantime, please pummel the like button, subscribe if you have not done so already, and press the little bell icon so you get notified when the next video drops. There should be the second part of this adventure up very shortly. I do hope you enjoyed the bit of flash fiction at the start of the episode. Once again, that was written by myself, having rolled on a couple of oracles for a bit of inspiration. Until next time, farewell and safe passage.